To illustrate the case in which corner solutions can arise, consider a version of the problem that is almost identical to the one that we studied in the previous example, except that now is the logarithm of x plus 1 and y plus 1 instead of the logarithm of x and y. We're also going to assume, just to simplify the explanation of this case, that P and Q are equal to 1, unitary prices in both cases. Now, the goal of this example is to characterize values of the parameters in which there are interior solutions, corner solutions in which all is spent in x, and corner solutions in which all is spent in y. So to do that, let's, as always, look at the graphical diagram of the first order conditions for this case, with again using the interpretation that this is the benefit function and that minus b logarithm of w minus x plus 1 is the cost function. Notice that the expression for y that we're using to substitute is now simpler because p and q are equal to 1. Now, let's plot the marginal benefit and the marginal cost function as a function of x. Now, we know that the regime in which we're going to be able to operate is either we spend all on nothing on y and all on x, or all of x and nothing on y. In this particular case, the value of x, since the price is equal to 1, is w. Now, the marginal benefit when x equal to 0 is going to have a value of a and is going to decrease like this. And in particularly here, the value is going to be equal to a divided w plus 1. So this is u prime of x, which we have been thinking of as the marginal benefit. Now, let's think about what the marginal cost looks like. And I'm going to draw it in another color to facilitate things. We know that when all of it is spent on x, there is nothing spent on y, and therefore the marginal cost curve is going to cross something like b, let's say. And that when nothing is spent on x, the marginal cost curve is going to cross at a point like b divided over w plus 1. Now, the important thing is that unlike before, the curves now don't go to infinity. They cross at a and b. So depending on the values of a and b, they may entail an interior solution, as I have drawn here, or they may entail a corner solution of different types. So let's think our way for what combinations of parameters a and b we're going to see corner solutions or interior solutions. So let's think first, what does it take to have a corner solution in which everything is spent in x? That is the case, as we saw before, in which this curve is always above the marginal cost curve. So think of this curve as being, in that particular case that I'm going to draw in green, being somehow up here. They never cross. Notice that that requires, given the interceptions, that b, so a solution with x star equals w, arises if and only if this point is above that point, which requires a divided by w plus 1 to be greater or equal than b. That means that we can draw a region here. Think of a line given by b equals to a divided w plus 1. All of these points in this region are points in which b is less or equal than aw plus 1, and these are regions in which we have a corner solution with x star equals w and y star equals 0. Now, in gray, I'm going to draw the opposite case, which is a case in which the marginal benefit is in the blue curve, but the marginal cost is always above the marginal benefit. So let's say something like this. And in that particular case, we never want to take any of the action x. So we're going to have a solution with x star equals 0 if and only if this point is above that point, which requires b w plus 1 to be greater or equal than a. So you can now think of a curve like this that has b equals to a times w plus 1, and points up here are points in which x star equals to 0 and y star equals to w. Now what happens in the middle? These are points with interior solutions of the type that we saw in the previous example. Now let me finish this example by checking the economic intuition, which I have been mentioning several times is a habit that you should develop, just to make sure that your solutions make sense. So think about what is the feature of points down here. These are situations in which people value the good x a lot more than the good y, since the weight a is greater than the good b. So it makes sense that they will be favoring the good x over the good y, and vice versa here. And it's only in intermediate points when a and b are close to each other that the consumer ends up spending money in good things. So intuitively, it makes sense.